Why do 70% of critical thinkers ditch Disney Plus? Because they found something better. In today's economy, every dollar counts. So what's worth subscribing to? Let's compare Disney Plus and no Soundbites Allowed. With Disney Plus, you're shelling out $140 a year for virtue signaling shows targeting mythical modern audiences. Plus, a theater visit could cost you $40 or more. Ouch. Now imagine a platform where fresh perspectives, insightful interviews, and engaging discussions are at your fingertips. That's no Soundbites Allowed. And the best part? It's free with an option to support only if you choose. While Disney Plus ticks off virtue signal checkboxes, no Soundbites Allowed offers real talk and sharp analysis. Perfect for those who crave depth and clarity. Why break the bank for entertainment? Subscribe to No Soundbites Allowed and enjoy meaningful content without the hefty price tag. Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss. I am the political dragon here in our offices in the Bronx, New York, and today is August 16th. It's currently 10:30 in the evening, and you may ask, gee, Mike, why are you still up? Why are you doing a video at this time at night? Well, the answer is very simply because I saw the interview with Bret Baier and Kamala Harris on Fox News, and it was amazing. I can truly say that I've never seen an interview of this caliber and of this nature before. It's astounding to me to see a presidential candidate in this kind of an interview. And so, much like we have done in previous interviews with Kamala Harris when she was on MSNBC and some of the other interviews that she has done, we're going to be looking at this interview. Now, this is the first interview that Kamala Harris has done where she has actually faced someone who will not only give her some pushback, but is also doing fact-checking to some degree on her answers and is actually looking for her to give an answer. It's I wouldn't call it antagonistic. It wasn't meant to be brutal. To be fair, Bret Baier is one of the best in the news media for hard news. He's not a commentator. He's not a pundit. He covers hard news, and he's very good at that. So it will be very interesting to see this interview with you. As we've done in the past, you'll see that we'll be posting what is the question that is being asked, and also we will include what is the answer that is being given. So this way you will know throughout the entire experience what is actually the question and what are the actual answers that we are receiving. So with that being said, we're going to start off and watch the entire, it's about 26 minutes. We'll see how long it actually takes us to go through. There will be text at the bottom in case you can't hear any of the words. We will have text of the entire video going at the same time. So let's start off.
Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad.
All right, so we have our first question. A very simple question. How many? What is the number of illegal aliens that entered into America under the Biden-Harris administration? It's 3.5 years. He's looking for a rough estimate, whatever that number may be. So we're looking for a number. Let's see what the answer is.
I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you
now,
just a number? Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point.
Well, that's an interesting start. Let's just get to the point. He asked a very simple question. Now, the number could be 1 million, could be 3 million. You can argue what the number is. There are some who say it's 6 million, some say it's 8 million. There are different numbers out there, different ways of counting. And you can say, well, those are asylum seekers or those who are illegally crossing the border. It's a number that it's variable. There's no single number that is exactly correct. So Kamala Harris has a lot of wiggle room if she wants, and she can then go on from there and explain her reasoning about why so many people are here. But by responding in the way she just did, let's get to the point, she's being antagonistic. She's now changed the nature of this interview because it started off cordially. And he didn't ask an attacking question saying, it's your fault that these illegal aliens came into America. He asked the number. What is the number? And then he has a follow-up question. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be attacking her or attacking her in a negative manner. It is a legit question. It's one of the top questions in every single poll that has been done in this entire year for American citizens. It's in the top 5 and usually in the top 3 of issues that Americans are concerned about. So establishing what are the facts and establishing where the understanding of those facts are is very important. But instead, Kamala Harris is being aggressive. She's being argumentative. Why would she do that? And that isn't a very good look. I mean, in terms of diplomacy, would you just walk up to Putin or Kim Jong-un, President Xi, or the Ayatollah of Iran and just go, let's just get to the point. Hey, you know what? Let me be insulting and aggressive to you, even though you've been polite to me. Let me just jump down your throat. Is that how you do diplomacy? Okay, so we're learning a little bit about Kamala Harris's character. If she doesn't like someone, or she thinks she won't like what they have to say, she's very dismissive. Let's go on.
Point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehension.
So she paused. He decided Bret Baier is providing facts. He's fact-checking Kamala Harris. Since she declined to answer the question and instead inserted her own question, her own subject, she's trying to change the subject. She's trying to switch to something she wants to talk about rather than what has happened. She doesn't want to talk about her record or the record of the Biden-Harris administration. She's dodging. But she's doing it inartfully. This isn't eloquent. This isn't tactful. This is just blatant and obvious. I don't want to talk about that. Move on. And that worked with every other major news media, which were friendly to her. But Fox News isn't trying to help get Kamala Harris elected. They want an answer. And Bret Baier in particular is being very specific. So here are the numbers coming from the Biden-Harris administration. Again, establishing the facts as they are so we have a level playing field to then make other questions about. And Kamala Harris doesn't want to hear it. She wants to move on.
I'm not finished. We have
It's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And
how can she goes, I'm trying to answer. How can you answer a question that hasn't been asked? See, he only asked one question. How many illegal aliens entered America? She said the system is broken. She's trying to talk about everything else. She's talking over Bret Baier, trying to impose her will on him, pressuring him. So she hasn't answered anything yet, but she has tried to change the discussion, and she's trying to intimidate Bret Baier, both with her position and, of course, the election, trying to pressure him to move on to something she would like to talk about, because she doesn't know what the question is. So again, we're getting a very clear image of who Kamala Harris is. She doesn't like what you're saying. She's going to be dismissive. She's going to be rude. And she is very hard-headed about how she's going to do it. Okay, so let's go on.
When you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
All right, so this isn't a second question, really. The first part was a clarification and an understanding of the facts at hand. And Bret Baier has now presented his next question, which was based on that. So because of the open border policy and removing the Remain in Mexico policy, individuals of questionable and dubious nature entered into the United States, and some of those individuals then committed heinous crimes in the United States. And now having hindsight on this, looking back, do you regret having removed the policy which enabled and allowed these individuals to come into America and harm American citizens? It's a straightforward. Now, you may say, well, that's kind of aggressive. It is, but it isn't. He didn't say it's your fault, per se. And again, this is the Biden-Harris administration. Joe Biden's the one who made the executive order that changed the policy. So it's not really on Kamala Harris. That's a Biden issue. Biden did that, not Kamala Harris. But she is part of the campaign. She's part of the administration. So she can very much say, well, I didn't have the final word on that. That wasn't her choice. She didn't make that executive order. She could give that answer, which would be absolutely true. That's not how she responds. But again, let's see how she goes forward with that.
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act,
She's now listing things that, well, you can call them accomplishments, although almost none of them actually got passed. She's trying to change the time frame and change the mindset of those who are viewing this. She's throwing out a list of accomplishments and things that were attempted by the Biden-Harris administration that were viewed positively by Democrats. But she's not answering the question at hand, which is, do you regret ending Remain in Mexico policy? That's it. And again, she can easily say that was Joe Biden's decision. She's not doing that. Instead, she's trying to boost her image and change and turn this into a blame against someone else. But Joe Biden made the decision. Joe Biden signed the executive order, and she remained quiet about it. She said nothing in opposition. So I don't know where she's really trying to go here, but let's hear the rest of it.
For the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath.
Notice practically within hours, because it wasn't within hours. She's, again, playing with the time to make it seem like she did something, or the Biden-Harris administration did something that they didn't in fact do. So she's playing with the memory of American citizens in that time frame and assuming that they won't remember. So if she says it like this, well, she hasn't exactly lied to the American people, but at the same time, she's not telling the truth, and you're not supposed to know the difference between the two. No, that's not right, but let's go on.
Was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship.
Okay, so now she's run into something she hasn't run into before. Kamala Harris has run into someone who's done their homework and is willing to provide the facts and fact check. She hasn't run into this. Any other news media organization so far have let her just ramble on and say whatever she wanted to say. They never corrected her. They never cited the legislation she's talking about. They would just let her say whatever she had to say and then go on to the next question. Bret Baier is making it possible for the American viewer, the American citizen and voter, to be able to look up the legislation for themselves. He cited directly the name of the legislation, so now you know what bill he's speaking about, what bill she is speaking about. See, the other thing is, since she didn't name the bill, though she named notice, she named a bunch of other bills. Those are the ones she liked. Those were the ones that were liked by the Democratic Party. She didn't mention this bill because she doesn't want you to look up this specific bill and see what's inside of it. You might read it through. You might find out that there's a poison pill included inside that bill, which Bret Baier will bring up later on in this discussion. So that's something else to highlight. She named all the other bills. She didn't name this one. That's a purposive thing. She did that so that you couldn't find out what she is saying, whether it's true or not, or where she's deviating. And she's not accustomed to this. She's not accustomed to someone knowing the issue better than she does and being able to present it to the American public so that she can now be caught if she lies. But let's see how she handles it.
May I please finish?
Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But she's not responding. She's not answering the question. Again, the question is, do you regret ending Remain in Mexico policy? She's talking about a bunch of other bills. She's talking about legislation that the Biden-Harris administration tried to push forward that Democrats like. That has nothing to do with the executive order that ended the Remain in Mexico policy. She has yet to address that. She has yet to address whether or not she regrets it or whether she thought it was a great idea. She's dancing around the issue, which is in fact wasting time. And she knows she only has about a half hour. So she's trying to kill time, confuse the audience, the American voter, and to move past this question. It's kind of insidious what she's doing, but let's go on.
But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and they didn't bring up
in the
that
middle
bill.
of responding to the point you're raising.
So again, Bret Baier has, again, provided context and fact, which she's not accustomed to. Because she says, well, we had this bill. And he goes, well, yeah, and you had Democrats in control. And they didn't bring this bill forward. The bill didn't go anywhere. But you had the power base. You had Democrats who could have presented that bill if you wanted to. So she doesn't like that because, again, this is a fact check. This is providing context. This is factual context. It has nothing to do with anything subjective. It has nothing to do with feelings. This is what happened at the time, and he is correctly providing that information to Kamala Harris and to the public, which means she knows she's caught. He knows what she's doing, and he's not playing the game. Let's see how she responds.
Okay.
And I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people.
That doesn't answer the question. We've already accepted, and he identified very clearly, yes, this is a priority for the American people. No one doubted that it's a priority for the Biden-Harris administration. In fact, that's why one of the first 40 executive orders by Joe Biden was in reference to the Remain in Mexico policy. So obviously, it was a priority. It was done within the first 48 hours, in fact, within the first 24 hours of Joe Biden taking power. So we know it's a priority. That's not in question. The question is, and I say again, do you regret ending the Remain in Mexico policy? That's the question. She has gone nowhere near that question. Let's go on.
And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including.
So she mentions a bunch of actions that were taken by the Biden-Harris administration, not in the very beginning of 2021, but in 2022, more so 2023 and beyond, as the crisis expanded and there was no way for the Biden-Harris administration to hide it from the public. So she's talking about late-term policy. That's not the question. And again, it does not address, does she have a regret? Now, she's trying to say they were working on all of these things, and she's about to, again, go back to the bill to try and distract and to change blame, to take the blame away from her and Joe Biden. But the question is, do you regret that your open border policy resulted in the death of American citizens? That's a very straightforward question. She's refusing to answer this. There's nothing wrong with saying, I regret that American citizens died. We didn't think that would be a consequence. That's why we put in place all these other safeguards and actions to try and circumvent that going forward. She could say that. She hasn't. She's too busy being upset with Bret Baier in not doing what every other major news media station has done so far, which is to capitulate and to be intimidated and to fortify the election by allowing her to say whatever she wants without clarification, without fact-checking, without any details. Let's see how she goes forward with this.
Some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill.
So she's now gone and said, well, see, we had a great bill. It would have worked. The open border policy with this additional bill from Congress would have made things safer. It would have made it better. I don't see how you get that conclusion, but that's the argument she's trying to make. And I find it interesting. So her answer is the immigration bill would have made America safe. That's not really accurate. And it still doesn't answer the initial question. Do you regret that Americans died because of the open border policy? Especially since the immigration bill didn't pass and they didn't revert back to the Remain in Mexico bill, that policy, until 2024. So there's a gap of time there where they could have reverted, just as they have now, and gone back to the Remain in Mexico policy much, much sooner, which may have saved American lives. She still hasn't addressed any of that, nor has she mentioned the poison pill that is inside the bill, which is why Republicans and conservatives didn't vote for it. Now, she's trying to make it seem like it was bipartisan, that Democrats and Republicans were absolutely willing and desiring to vote for this bill. That's not true. That's not accurate because of a portion of the bill, the poison pill in there, that would have allowed 1.8 million illegal aliens to enter into America every year. That's why they needed the 1,500 additional border agents to process the illegal aliens and to let them into America. It isn't closing the border. It's slowing down how many people come through the open border. It still leaves the border open. It doesn't resolve the underlying problem. But let's see how this is carried forward.
It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country.
No guarantee on that. Again, it slows the number of people coming into America. It doesn't stop them. So therefore, it doesn't stop sex slavery. It doesn't stop illegal drugs. It slows it. It impedes some of it, but it doesn't stop it.
Killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you notice she's starting to get upset? This is what I have done. I have been in charge. I have power. That's what she's saying. She's now moved from Biden-Harris policy and consequences of that policy, legislation by Democrats and the consequences of that. She's now moved into a personal. She's taking this personally. She shouldn't. We're talking about policy. He's talking about policy of the Biden-Harris administration, not Kamala Harris. But she's now taking it as a personal attack because he has dared to push back and to provide context and facts and she's no longer in control of this interview. She's the one who's going to have to answer. She's subordinate, and she doesn't like that. Let's see what else she has to say.
The Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state,
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to.
So she's gone from emphasizing her track record, but no one cares that she was Attorney General. No one cares that she was a DA. That's not her job as Vice President. No one cares about that. She doesn't prosecute criminals in courts as Vice President. So it doesn't matter what she did as AG. By the way, that didn't stop anything else happening in any other state. She's saying, well, I was going after criminals in California. Fantastic. What about the ones in Texas, New Mexico? What about all the other border states? That didn't help anyone in those states. And this policy is more than just California. It's the entire southern border of the United States. So she's trying to assert her authority and again trying to quiet Bret Baier as he's trying to provide more context and more facts to the American people while she's trying to use her authority to create an authority bias and to silence him. She's literally battling for control over this interview and trying to assert herself over Bret Baier rather than answer the question, which has yet to be answered. Let's go on.
Kill it because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election.
So now she's gone through the accomplishments of the Biden-Harris administration, blamed this on Congress for not passing a bill. She's gone on to say how great she is and Orange Man bad. It's obviously Donald Trump's fault, not addressing the bill itself or what the bill had in it that Republicans and conservatives objected to. She hasn't addressed any of that yet. She hasn't addressed to the fact that 6 Democrats also were part of those in opposition of her bill. Not just Republicans, not just conservatives, Democrats were against it as well for the same reason. It didn't close the border. It just slowed down the number of illegal aliens entering America, slowed it down to 1.8 million per year, which is still far more than can be absorbed by Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, many of the border states. But let's go forward.
This is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue.
I hear you.
But you are playing political games. In March of 2021, to be exact, March 24th of 2021, Kamala Harris was the border czar. This was her issue to address. It was her issue to resolve. So she is playing political games by saying it's everyone else's fault. It's the fault of Congress. It's the fault of Donald Trump. But you are the one in charge of this. She's even blaming, to a certain extent, Joe Biden, saying it was his fault for removing the policy but not having the legislation to go along with it. So she's pushed the blame everywhere but on herself, and she still has not answered the question at hand, which is very simply, do you regret ending the Remain in Mexico policy? We're now 4 minutes and 15 seconds into this interview. She has yet to answer the first question. Okay, let's see how far she goes with this.
Actually is focused on fixing
6
it.
Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country.
Notice who voted against it. Bernie Sanders, a socialist. Cory Booker, he's a senator, and he's a pretty progressive Democrat. And he was against it, and She was buddies with Cory Booker when she was in the Senate. You have Butler, Padilla, Kirsten Sinema, who's also now an independent, who started off as a somewhat progressive Democrat and then moved off and got kicked out of the Democratic Party. Interesting group of individuals that said no. More than half of them are progressives, and you would think that would make them more likely, and yet they aren't. Only 3 of them were actually 2 in California, 1 in Arizona, only 3 of them dealing with the southern border. And yet, even in Massachusetts and Vermont and New Jersey, they were against this bill because it allowed illegal aliens to continue to come in and overwhelm the system. But again, Kamala Harris doesn't want to address that. She doesn't want to talk about that. She wants to move on. She wants a different question, and she doesn't want to talk about the actual track record. Let's go on.
Country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday, campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed.
Look at what she just did. She's pursing her lips. Look at her eyes. She's a deer caught in the headlights, because Bill Clinton correctly and truly did say this. And it is a dig against the Biden-Harris administration. It's against the policy and her actions as border czar. She's caught. And more importantly, Bret Baier has returned to the question at hand, something that she has been desperately trying to avoid. She's been trying to change the subject, change the issue, change the way voters will think about it. But Bret Baier has stayed on message. He's provided clarification. Apparently, he knew, or their team thought, that she was not going to answer the question. They were prepared to show both the quote from Bill Clinton as well as the individuals who voted against the bill, knowing that she would bring it up, or maybe it was a different question he was going to ask. I don't know. But they were prepared for her. She's not prepared for them. And this is looking really bad already.
So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe...
He is correct about that. This was done within the first 48 hours, the first 40 executive orders of Joe Biden. This is before the bill. It's before Donald Trump. This was started almost immediately, almost instantly, as soon as Joe Biden got in office. So Bret Baier isn't exaggerating. He is making this very clear, and he is providing the facts as they existed, not how anyone would prefer them based on their political bias. This is the truth.
Bret,
Those families, an apology.
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases.
That's not an apology. Saying that this was tragic isn't saying she's sorry or she has regret. She has yet to say that. Saying it's tragic isn't an apology or regret. I said that twice, but it's important to identify that. She's not apologizing here.
There's no question about that.
No one's questioning.
There's no question about that.
No one's questioning it.
And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred.
That's not acknowledging regret. That isn't an apology. Highlighting what happened, highlighting the emotions others may have had, is not addressing the question Bret Baier asked. She's still dodging.
So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago...
She's now pushed the issue onto Donald Trump and onto Congress. 9 months before, well then, if it was 9 months before, in the Trump administration, if they had done this, it would not have been a problem. It would have been okay. Well, that's not the question at hand. That's not the reality at hand. She's dodging. She's trying to find desperately any way to blame this on someone else than the Biden-Harris administration and her silence, and as well, her failures as border czar. That's all that's happening right now. And it looks pretty desperate.
It would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur.
You cannot guarantee that, as the bill would allow 1.8 million illegal aliens into America, which means, and they're not being vetted, so those individuals still may have entered into America and still may have committed the crimes that she's speaking about. So the bill does not prevent the consequence. Closing the border would have. She doesn't want to close the border. She has never wanted to close the border. In fact, she has said that having the border open, in her interview with ABC in Philadelphia, she did say she wants to have an open border and a path to citizenship, which is a way of getting votes, because that would be a slave indentured citizenry. But let's see how she tries to tie this together to get back to, if at all, the question of regret.
And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because they're...
Now she's trying to make it seem like having an open border is a political advantage, and that it's better than closing the border. She's trying to make it seem like Donald Trump's at fault for what her administration did, because Joe Biden didn't need to remain in Mexico. And in fact, he's brought it back now because it actually works. But for the time that he had removed it, this is the consequence. She doesn't want to deal with that. She wants to distract from that. And she's trying to say, well, the American people know that if we have someone who was on the job, doing the job right, but you didn't. The Biden-Harris administration didn't do the job right. They're the ones who changed a policy that allowed Americans to be injured by that policy. She just doesn't want you to think about it too much. Let's go on.
Was a solution, Bret.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
You got to feel for that. And I have to give it to Bret Baier and his team. They were prepared for pushback from Kamala Harris. I doubt that they expected what they've received, but they expected some pushback, and they were prepared with video so that she would have to address the question of regret if she dodged. This is something that Kamala Harris did to herself. If she had addressed this question and answered it, it's now 6 minutes 46 seconds into the interview, and she still hasn't answered the first question. She's danced around and said everything, even though she's been given every opportunity to answer the question, however she's going to answer it. She hasn't even gotten close to it. The closest she's gotten is to say that it was a tragedy, which isn't even in the ballpark of answering it. And now look at her face. Having seen the video that we just saw, that video clip, having seen that mother say to her that the Biden-Harris policy, her actions as border czar, have failed and caused the death of an American citizen, and that she is being directly blamed for it, as well as Joe Biden, look at her face. Does Kamala Harris look remorseful in this moment? To you, Do you think she looks like she has regret? Or do you think she's pissed off? Do you think she's angry that she feels like she has been trapped? Do you think she feels like she has no way out? Because this isn't a trap. She could have answered this already and moved on. But because of her actions, she's still on the same question. She looks bad and she knows it. And she's angry. At least that's the way I see her face right this moment. Look at her body language. Closed off. Look at her face. Angry. Pursed lips. Not closed eyes, but tighter eyes. She's angry right now. Let's see how she reacts.
Early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for.
Shaking her head, no. She's shaking her head, no. That's a very odd thing to do. He just asked again, do you owe them an apology? She's shaking her head, no. Doesn't matter what she says after that. She's shaking her head, no. She does not believe she owes anyone an apology. But let's see if she will give it anyway.
For her loss. I'm so sorry for her loss. Sincerely.
Sincerely sorry for a loss. Is that regret? I'm not quite sure. Is it an apology? Absolutely not. And does she look sincere? I don't think so. I think she looks angry. I think she looks angry because she's been forced to try and address this question, to finally answer the question. She can't dodge it anymore. She's been dodging with everything she had, including Orange Man Bad and going back in history, and she still has to answer this question, which she absolutely does not want to answer. And I think she's pissed off. I don't think she's regretful. I don't think she feels sorry.
But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions.
She's again changed this. She feels sorry, but talk about something different. Let's talk about something else. This is horrible. This is one of the worst answers I have heard a presidential candidate ever give. This is worse than Gary Johnson being high and doesn't know how to answer Aleppo. This is worse than, this is one of the worst answers I've ever seen. She looks horrendous right now, and she knows it. And she wants desperately to be talking about anything else in the universe.
Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in
her?
all fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family.
She feels awful. Are you sorry? Well, she said she did say she feels sorry. To be fair, she said she feels sorry. She says she feels awful. Okay. Is that regret? I don't think so. Is that an apology? Absolutely not. But let's go on.
We have experienced.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
We have a new question. So we have a new question, again, backed up by fact. It is a fact that she did say repeatedly for years that the border was secure, that there was no crisis at the border. She said that. Joe Biden said that for years. When did it stop? Very simple question. Again, he's asking simple questions. It's been 7 minutes and 22 seconds. Let's see how long it takes her to answer this question.
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration.
So the answer to the question is the border is broken. And it's been broken. It was broken under the Obama administration. Her words, she said, it was broken before the Trump administration. Well, that would be the Obama-Biden administration. So she's throwing them under the bus. Not to say that it was not broken before that even, but she is directly saying, because she said it's broken before Trump, well, that would be Obama-Biden. So she's throwing Biden under a bus, she's throwing Obama under a bus to cover up for herself. But even in throwing them under a bus, the question is, when did it stop being secure? It's a simple question. He didn't ask if it was broken. No one's disputed whether or not the border system, the immigration process, if it's broken, no one asked that question. No one's denied that it's been broken or how long it's been broken. That's not even been brought up. No one said that it was fixed under Trump. No one has ever assumed that it was fixed under Trump or under Obama for that matter. That's not part of the question. It's a simple thing. When, in her mind, as borders are, did the border stop being secure? It's simple. It's straightforward. It should be easy to answer. And yet, it seems it absolutely isn't.
And even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride.
I love how she says, let's be honest about that, as if anyone has denied that. At no point has Bret Baier said that the border wasn't broken, that the immigration process isn't broken. No one has said that. No one has suggested that. Not even in the wider political realm has anyone said that the border process, the immigration system, isn't broken. So when she says, let's be honest about that, as she's assuming that someone's being deceptive, or more importantly, she wants you as the viewer to think that someone is being deceptive and that she is being the honest broker. Except that's never been in question. No one has denied this. So she's being deceptive by trying to portray herself as the only honest person in this interview and in politics. It's really insidious. She's flipping the roles, trying to make herself look like she's the good person and everyone else is the bad guy, when in fact, she's the one dodging the question. The only one dodging the question at hand at the moment. Let's go on.
In saying that this is a perfect immigration system, I've been clear, I think we all are.
Absolutely no one has said that the U.S. immigration system is perfect. Oh my God, never. I'm 56 years old. I've never heard anyone say that the U.S. immigration system is perfect, ever. That's never been suggested by Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, libertarians. I don't think there's anyone in the world that would ever say that. But she wants you to think someone has said that in the past, in particular her opponents, Republicans and Democrats, maybe even Orange Man Bad Donald Trump. She wants you to think that they've said that, and therefore she is being the ray of sunlight and she's being the pure and true person telling you the honest truth that no one has ever said, nor does anyone dispute the fact that it's broken. It's a question of how do we fix it? That has always been the question. For 56 years of my life, that has been the question facing the United States government and every administration. But she's trying to make it seem like she's the only one. And she has this incredulous look on her face like, don't you get it? The system's broken. No one said it wasn't. Don't you get it? The system's not perfect. No one expected it to be. She's the only one who's trying to make it seem like everyone else assumes this or has said this, and she's the only one to recognize that that's just not reality. It is so dishonest.
That it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure you probably, I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist.
So now she's trying to butter him up. She's trying to make him feel better about interviewing her. She's trying to get him on her side. I know you do a great job. You're an investigative journalist. You ask all these questions. You know I'm right. I'm a nice person. I'm a good person. Join my side. Let's both be on the same side. Be nice to me. That's what she's attempting to do here. She's trying to get him on her side. We're friends. We're on the same team. Be nice to me. But she still hasn't answered the question. There's a lot of manipulation going on in her conversation at this moment, and she's used to it working. You can see it in her face. She seems confused that this manner of speaking to people, to denigrate them, to try and ingratiate them, and to also assert herself through her authority bias, it's not working on Bret Baier, and she hasn't encountered that before, at least not in years. So she doesn't know how to deal with this. So I think it's very interesting to watch this and to see her face as she's trying to figure out how to get this guy on her side, how to get him to be friendly and to not keep pressing these questions.
They will tell you, we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that that's going to get fixed, Bret.
So again, she's moved the blame for the broken immigration system to Congress, which is true. And that's absolutely correct. It is a problem of Congress. But presidents and vice presidents do have the power to influence. And through executive orders, as we have seen under Obama and under Biden, and to an extent under Trump as well, they do have the ability to close the border, which would affect immigration policy as well. Not as effectively as Congress could, but it is a stopgap measure if it's used in that way. So she's again trying to deflect and trying to change the question and change the conversation, because she doesn't want to answer the question, which is, when did the border stop being secure? Nothing she has said so far has addressed when did the border stop being secure. I don't know why we're talking about Congress and their ability to pass new immigration law when the question is, when did you, Kamala Harris, see the border as not secure? Something that you said for years was the case. It's amazing to me. Let's go on.
Brett,
Well,
that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question.
But
There were
that's how the
90
system
plus
works.
executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other.
Okay. So Bret Baier recognizes that he has spent 8 minutes, 20 seconds, 19 seconds to try and get 2 questions answered. Just 2. Very simple. Let's call it even. You could even think of it as 3, but it's really just 2 questions. But he asked very simply about, so he needs to move forward because he has other questions. He has limited time. He knows he has he's got about half an hour, maybe less. He's trying to get through this as fast as he can. He's got other questions he needs to ask. And I think it's become very apparent she's not going to answer this question. She hasn't answered any question he's given so far. Maybe she'll answer the next question. Maybe. Let's see.
Other things to talk about, but you frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
So now we have our second question. Why did the Border Patrol that was supporting Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and some of their policies, why do they now say she has failed? Why do they now support Trump? Simple. Okay. And this is an opinion. Obviously, this will be an opinion. What makes you feel like they don't think you succeeded? It's easy enough. Okay.
I think they're frustrated.
Well, that's an answer. I don't know if it's a good answer to say that they're frustrated. That's why. That's why they said you failed, because they're frustrated. So it's the Border Patrol's fault for saying you're a failure, or to think and feel that you failed them because they're frustrated. They're just upset. They're disgruntled workers. She's denigrating the Border Patrol for not supporting her. There's a lot to the words that she has chosen. She could have said a lot of things, but she's saying they're frustrated. Well, that's not very good, because that's not saying that they have a reason to be frustrated, like it's justified. She's not saying they're justified in that feeling that she failed, that they're correct in that feeling that she failed, that they have some legitimacy to their feeling that she failed. No, she's just saying they're disgruntled workers. That's kind of insulting. Let's see what else she has to say about it. Maybe she cleans it up.
And I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done.
So it's not her fault. They're disgruntled because Congress didn't do what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden wanted. Okay. So they're upset at the wrong person. They're frustrated with the wrong person. They don't know. They're not smart enough. They didn't get it. Border Patrol is pissed at her because they're not smart enough to be pissed off at Congress. They're blaming the wrong people. And of course, Congress is under the thumb of Orange Man Bad, Donald Trump, so they should be mad at Donald Trump by extension, even though there's valid reasons why Democrats, who aren't under the thumb of Donald Trump, presumably, also voted against the bill. So she doesn't want to address any of that. It's as simple enough to say, you don't get it. You're not smart enough to understand that you should be mad at someone else. She's great, and you just don't understand. Let's go on.
These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of...
They're working hard. They're working around the clock. She gets it. They're frustrated at but they should be frustrated at Congress. They should be frustrated at Orange Man Bad. She didn't say, why are they frustrated with her? She's the one in charge. She didn't come up with a solution either. But okay, let's move on.
A lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
So Bret Baier has moved on to question 3. Simple enough. He's now asked, do you still support, as you did in 2019, giving the illegal aliens various perks, to give them benefits for entering into the United States illegally? She said yes in 2019. Does she say yes in 2024? It's pretty straightforward. What's your policy? Where do you stand?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law.
Well, there's an answer I didn't expect. It's old news. That was 2019. This is 2024. I follow the law. That's not what he asked you. That has nothing to do with what he asked you. He asked a very simple question. Do you believe that illegal aliens should get perks for breaking U.S. law? It's a yes or no, essentially. She can say, I changed my mind. I have a different way of looking at that. I have a different experience now being vice president and seeing the consequences different than what I had as a senator. She could have said that. That would make sense. She could explain why she has a more nuanced view. It's a more difficult question. Instead, she said, that's old news. This is 2024. Why are you asking me about old news? Why are you asking me about my record? See, she's, again, trying to move away from questions she doesn't want to talk about. She's annoyed right now. She's annoyed by this question. Why are you asking me about my record? Which, is fair game. She's an elected official, and she held these positions. Why not? She brought up her previous record as a DA and an AG. Why can't Bret Baier bring up her previous record as a senator and as a candidate for the presidency in 2019? She should be able to answer this. Either the answer is yes, she still thinks that illegal aliens should get perks, or the answer is no. And maybe she can add nuance to that and say, well, there's more to it than just that. There's different aspects to that based on my experience. She could say that, but that isn't what she said. She said it's old news. Move on.
I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
She follows the law. That doesn't answer the question, do you support this? This is something that could change in the future. By executive order or by Congress, there could be perks given to illegal aliens. Do you think they should get them? Should there be movement, legislation, or executive orders that will give illegal aliens perks that are paid for by American citizens, that encourage illegal aliens to enter into America? Where does she stand on this issue? Saying, I follow the law, doesn't answer the question about what law do you want to see. It's very frustrating. Listening to her is very upsetting because it's very obvious she's trying to dodge yet again.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law.
Wait a minute. That you have to, but he signed into law things that conflict with federal law. So Tim Walz, as governor, signed perks. He agreed to give perks to illegal aliens. He has a sanctuary state. He believes in sanctuary, giving sanctuary to illegal aliens. So he's in violation of federal law. And he agrees with breaking federal law. How can you say that he follows federal law when he's actively breaking it? And you are supporting him. You picked him as your vice president. So do you agree with him? Again, it comes back to the question at hand. Do you think illegal aliens should get a perk? You picked a vice president who thinks that they should. And he is in fact actively giving them perks, violating federal law. Where do you stand, Kamala Harris? And where would you stand if you were to be elected? Tell the American people.
And that is exactly what we will do.
So decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing.
We've got an answer. She gave an answer to decriminalize. Now, not really a separate question, but it is a different answer. So under Kamala Harris, while she's okay with giving illegal aliens perks, to give them college and other perks, to spend American taxpayer money on illegal aliens that have broken the law, but she won't make it legal to cross the border. So the border is open. She still will allow them to come into the nation, but it's still a crime that she won't enforce. Based on what she's already said, she won't enforce the laws. She won't deport the illegal aliens. She will give them perks, and she supports her running mate, Governor Walz, in giving them more perks, but she won't make it legal. She'll just make it a national sanctuary to ignore the law. Okay, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's an answer.
Border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
So these are evolutions that you've had.
No, but let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president.
Now she's pissed off. Now she's upset because she just got caught. Because she's not willing to say she won't give illegal aliens perks. In fact, she supports giving them the perks. She did in 2019. She's unwilling to say she won't give them perks going forward. She got caught, and now she's pissed off. Now she has to reassert she's the authority. She's the one in charge. She's the vice president. You better know your place. She's about to put Bret Baier in his place, she thinks. That's what we're seeing.
President who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara cartel.
Which has nothing to do with being vice president. It has nothing to do with being president. That's either her past matters, and we can bring up questions about her past, like in 2019, or it doesn't matter. But in particular, being an AG isn't like being president, or even vice president for that matter. Being a DA isn't like being president or vice president. There's no comparison between the two. You have different responsibilities. So saying that she's had this responsibility in the past, quite some time ago, and that she prosecuted some people sometimes, even though she supports sanctuary cities and sanctuary states and open borders, it's kind of a mixed bag there. But this is about throwing her authority around. She's throwing her titles at Bret Baier, and more importantly, throwing her titles at you, the audience. I have authority. Here's my titles. Respect my titles. Don't ask me questions. Don't question my answers because I'm an authority. This is authority bias in action. It's not working, but that's what she's doing.
Cartel, to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career.
Notice how it's very personal for her now. This isn't personal. He wasn't personally attacking her. He's trying to get clarification from her. There's a big difference between the two. Now, she may not like the question, which she obviously doesn't, and she doesn't like that she's being put on the spotlight on her, but she should expect that. I mean, she is running for the presidency. So she's taking this incredibly personally. She shouldn't be taking it personal. It's not personal. Bret Baier hasn't accused her of anything, but she feels that. Look at her face. Look at her response. Look at how I'm great. I have authority. I'm significant. You should respect me. That's what she's doing. But that should be earned. And even with it, we're in America. You can question anyone. There is no one in elected office that can't be questioned by any American citizen. That's the First Amendment. So she isn't humble. And in fact, she's upset. And I have to ask, why? Why is Kamala Harris taking it so personally? Why is she so upset?
Going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that work as vice president.
But you haven't done that work as vice president. And we have no reason to believe you do it as president because you weren't doing that job when you opened the borders, when Joe Biden rescinded the Remain in Mexico policy and you became border czar. You didn't stop or vet the illegal aliens that entered into America that killed those 3 women. You didn't do your job. You didn't protect the American people. But you don't expect us to remember what you were just saying 2 minutes ago. Okay, that's unique.
I take that work quite seriously.
This is a time when voters, especially here in Pennsylvania, are inundated with commercials and ads. They just want it to stop because it's every commercial. But many of them add noise, but a few of them seem to break through. This particular one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So,
did you see her movement? Did you see her? Look at her face right now. This is from September of 2024. In fact, September 9th of 2024. So this is current. This is her current view. It's not a past view. It's not from 2019 or the 2020 election. It's not from when she was in Senate or in California. This is today. This is now. And look at her face. Her face is saying, how dare you? It's indignant. She's indignant at this moment. How dare you ask me about this? How dare they play that commercial? How dare they quote me? Okay, let's see how she handles it, even though she's being indignant.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law.
Well, that's an interesting exchange. So she just said in September that she wants to pay for criminals and for illegal aliens to change their gender using taxpayer money, of course, using your money out of your pocket to pay for these criminals and for these illegal aliens to have their gender altered. Okay. She's saying, and now in front of Bret Baier, she said, I will follow the law. Well, that's not what you just said. Just 1 month ago, you said you want to pay and use taxpayers' money to pay for these sex changes. That's not following the law. That's not law at this moment, and so you can't be following the law. And that doesn't really explain your position. But maybe she gets more clear in a moment. Let's find out.
And it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing, stones when you're living in a glass house.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know if I would say that it's throwing stones in a glass house because, well, she's saying that it's a law. It's a medical necessity. Now, okay, so it's not voluntary. It has to be a necessity. That isn't what she was saying on the stage, that if it's absolutely found to be a medical necessity for these individuals, that would be something that she would use taxpayer money to pay for. And how do you determine if it's a medical necessity? Not quite sure. That seems kind of vague, but that's where she sees the difference. Okay, so she's answered the question. She would follow the law, and the law says if it's a medical necessity that she would use taxpayer money to make that happen. Okay, fair enough.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what, you got to
happened
take
during
responsible.
Well, okay, another fact check. Donald Trump followed the law too. Donald Trump also followed the law. He didn't want the law. He didn't advocate for the law, but he followed the law. And by the way, the law was never enacted while Donald Trump was in office. So that is something to make a difference. She has advocated for it. She does support it. Donald Trump doesn't. He's been very clear about that. And his administration didn't. That's why none of these gender transitions happened, because they were not medically necessary. But Kamala Harris says she's all for it. Okay, there is a clear difference there, and both in terms of policy and ways to enact that policy. It's very clear.
Well, for what
His
happened in your
presidency.
administration.
Yeah, no, sir.
Oh, but here's the part I just caught, and you caught it too. You're responsible for what happens in your administration. This is what she said. You're responsible for the things that happen in your administration. So she's responsible for the inflation because it happened in the Biden-Harris administration. She's responsible for getting back the American hostages that are held by Hamas. She's responsible for the American citizens that died while Hamas has been torturing and sexually abusing them. She's responsible for the Ukraine war, or our funding of the Ukraine war ad nauseum, for as long as it's going to take. She's responsible for all the negatives that have been happening. She just admitted that she's responsible because it happened in the administration she's a part of. So it's her fault. Let's see if she believes that later on in this conversation.
Surgeries happened in this presidency.
It's in
so
black and white.
would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassessment
I will
surgeries?
follow the law, just as I
you have a
think
say
Donald
in
Trump would
this.
say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think he spent $20 million on those ads.
Who cares how much money he spent on the ad? If it's not untrue, it's not made up, it's not fictional, you are advocating, you, Kamala Harris, are advocating for transgender surgeries on taxpayer dime for criminals and illegal aliens, which in other words is criminals. You want to help criminals, and you're going to use taxpayer money to change their gender. That's what you advocate for. That's what you were just advocating for. Whether or not Donald Trump spent $100 million on that, or whether he spent 20 cents, that doesn't change your political position. And in fact, if you agree with that, you should be happy that Donald Trump is spending $20 million letting the American people know this is a policy you support. If you support it, why don't you want more people to see it? You should ask Donald Trump to spend $50, $100 million telling everyone that you support this because you do support it. Unless you don't. Unless you only supported it for that crowd at that time because you thought it would get you votes. And you don't want other people, the mainstream of America, to know that you support giving criminals and illegal aliens gender transition surgeries on their tax dime. You don't want the person in the middle of, middle of America, you don't want them to know that their taxes are going to go towards that because they won't vote for you for that. So that's why you're upset Donald Trump is spending $20 million to let them see this is something you believe in, because otherwise you should be happy about it. Donald Trump is advertising your policies. You should be happy. Am I wrong? Let's go on.
Trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people.
That's not true. That is patently and absolutely not true. Now, she may not agree with the plans that Donald Trump has. She may not agree with the consequences that Donald Trump thinks will happen, but she can't say he has no plan. That's factually incorrect. That's just her putting her feelings and assuming that her feelings are the truth. No, it's not. So she's lying right now. But let's go on.
Whereas, at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite remote. And
wait a minute, you're upset that Donald Trump spent $20 million on something that's not a major issue for America. Why do you care? Why do you care he spent $20 million if it's not important, if it's not an issue that people will vote on? Why do you care? If he's not misrepresenting you, you do support this. So does it matter if he spent $1 billion on it? It's your position. So why should you care how much money he spent? Why should you be worried that if he's wasting his time telling people a position you have that they aren't voting on, why do you care? That means you're getting an advantage. It's helping you, Kamala. So why are you upset that he's doing this? Unless it's something that is important to voters. And it's something that voters don't agree with. The only reason why you would be upset that he spent $20 million is knowing that $20 million worth of people are seeing this. And that those $20 million worth of people don't agree with you on your position. And you don't want them to see that. You want them to think you have a different opinion or no opinion at all. And that's why you're upset, because you've been caught. And Donald Trump is exposing your positions. And you thought no one would find out. That's the only reason why you would be upset that he's doing this and how much money he spent to do this. It's really interesting to listen to this woman speak and when we understand what she's really thinking about, it's really remarkable how petty it is and how it's all about her personal ambition and, damn everyone else if they don't help her get more power. Let's go on.
And again, his policy was no different. Look at where we are, though.
They say
on
it was
plans for
different,
the
but
American
we'll
people,
move on.
I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing.
Okay, now she's transitioned. Now she switched. Again, the question was about, do you support paying for illegal aliens and criminals to get sex changes? This is using taxpayer dollars. That's the question at hand. She's upset because she does support that, and Donald Trump doesn't. And Donald Trump is telling everyone she supports this. And she's upset because she doesn't want everyone to know that she supports this. It's the only reason why she'd be upset with Donald Trump telling everyone her policy, something that she was on stage telling people about. So she has to be, that's the only reason why she would be upset. And now she wants to talk about her 3 main talking points, something she tries to get into every question she can, which is, of course, the $50,000 for small business, the 3 million houses she's going to build, the one-time $6,000 child tax credit. She always goes back to those because those are her policies. That's it. She runs on those policies and Orange Man bad. And that's what we've been seeing in this. She's trying not to answer anything else. Even policies that they're quoting her on, she doesn't want to admit to anything except those 3 policies and Orange Man bad. And every question she's been trying to get to that or to run away from the question entirely. Let's see how this goes.
I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy.
What does that have to do with your support of illegal aliens getting sex changes? Which was the question you were asked. Nothing.
I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need.
Child tax credit. It's a one-time credit only if you have a newborn. Doesn't apply if your child is 1 to age 21. You don't get the credit. She doesn't want to mention that detail. Notice she left out it's a child tax credit, not for parents of anything but newborns. So you might as well call it a newborn tax credit because that's the only people that it applies to, and it only applies for the 1 year. It's a $6,000 one-time tax credit. And again, that's a tax credit. You got to spend the money first to get that credit. So not that helpful for a lot of people. But that being said, again, what's it got to do with the question at hand? Nothing. Okay, she's squeezing in her policy points to try and make it sound better because she knows she doesn't look very good so far. So she's trying to get to the things she wants to talk about. She's trying to take over the conversation. She's trying to change the interview. And she was able to do that on ABC and NBC and CBS. She was able to change the conversations. She's trying to do that now. Again, as she has been for the last 12 minutes and 51 seconds of the interview, she's trying to take control, and it's not working for her. But let's see how it goes.
My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs did not review her policy. The CEO of Goldman Sachs himself came out and actually said, Goldman Sachs didn't do the review. That was an independent individual. In addition, that independent review actually didn't say Donald Trump policy was worse. It said that in the near term, Donald Trump's policy is better than Kamala Harris's. And if you were to extend the tax policies of Donald Trump and Kamala Harris out for 30 years, which is impossible, never happens, we'll never make it that long. Most tax policies don't make it through one administration, let alone carry forward into the next and the next and the next. So that's not realistic. But if you were to go out 30 years, then and at the end of 30 years, Kamala Harris's policy would be slightly better by about $200,000. Slightly better, but to be exact, 0.2% better than Donald Trump after 30 years. Not the same thing. She assumes the American people haven't read the report. She assumes that they haven't heard Goldman Sachs CEO debunk what she is saying right now. But some of us actually have. Let's go on.
Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weak.
And there are economists on the other side of that, including Goldman Sachs, that say the opposite. So, again, not really important. But why are we talking about the economy when the question is, how are you using taxpayer money? What are the policies that you support using taxpayer money for? Why are you giving benefits to criminals and to illegal aliens with taxpayer money? That's at the heart of the question that Bret Baier asked, and you're not addressing that. Okay, let's go on.
Why do you
would
think more
ignite
people
inflation
say,
and invite a recession by the middle of next year.
There's going to be a recession. We've been in a recession since August of 2022. That's already happened. So to say that there's going to be a recession next year, the only reason why there isn't a recession right now is the Biden administration in August of 2022 changed the definition of a recession. That's it. They literally went in and changed the definition of the governmental definition of a recession so that you couldn't claim that the Biden administration was in a recession. But we are. And we're feeling that impact now. And the things that caused that recession, well, they don't go away overnight. So in 2025, regardless of who is elected president, we will still be in a recession. Food prices will still be higher, even if the Ukraine-Russia war ended right now. We still would have to wait an entire year before we would be able to get food prices even close to reducing, because the crops have to be planted and grow and harvested. So it's at least another year. You're talking 2026 for that. You're looking at how much money are we spending. We're going to spend another $2 trillion at least in the 2025 fiscal year, which means there's going to be more inflation going forward, no matter which president we have. So that's going to happen as well. Energy prices don't change on a dime. Now, they're getting better, true, but that's not going to be enough by itself. So again, we're going to have a recession in 2025 because we're already in a recession, and they don't stop on the dime. It takes time to turn that policy around. So she's not being very honest and genuine about this. She's lying, because we'll be just as much in a recession under Kamala Harris as we would under Donald Trump. If we're being honest about it, that's the truth. But let's see what else she's going to say, because Bret Baier is about to ask another question.
Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him?
All right, this is going to be an interesting question. Asking Kamala Harris, why is it in all the polls, every pollster out there, when asking about the economy, overwhelmingly, the American people, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, they say they trust Donald Trump more and Republicans more on economic policies than they do Kamala Harris and or Democrats, which is actually historically pretty consistent. Usually, Republican presidents and Republicans are viewed more positively for their economic policies than Democrats. So that's kind of historic, but in this case, this specific case, how does Kamala Harris answer that? You may be surprised a lot by her answer here.
On the economy, then they trust you.
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as President of the United States, it has been clear to those who study.
Clear to those who study. Clear to people who study. Now this is elitist. This is Kamala Harris saying, you're dumb. She is calling the American people dumb. You don't know enough. You're not smart enough. Smart people think that Kamala Harris has a better outlook. She has a better plan. Smart people are with Kamala. Dumb people are with Trump. That's what she's saying right now. If you study, if you have the knowledge, you're just dumb. You just don't get it. It's very insulting, and it's about to get worse.
And understand how economic policy works, that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready.
People are ready to get away from Donald Trump. Donald Trump hasn't been in charge for 3.5 years. But more importantly, they're going to follow, but the smart people who are going to lead, they're going with Kamala. This is what she's saying. Listen to her very carefully about how she is describing two different groups of people. There is the leadership, which if they're smart, they go with Kamala. And then there's the public who will follow. They're just suffering because they're followers and they're following the wrong thing. And if they are smart, Well, if they're smart followers, they're going to get on board with Kamala. She is being very, very denigrating to the American people. She has a very low opinion of the average American worker. It's coming through in her answer here. Just listen to what she's saying.
Ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country.
Her plan. They want a president who has a plan and is smart, and you know the answer they're going to follow. That's not the way American people think, but you know what? Give the American people more credit. They're smart. Americans balance their budgets every single day. The government doesn't. The government and Democrats tax and spend and spend and spend. The American people don't get to do that. The American people live within their means or very close to it. Government and politicians, nowhere near that. So I think you need to give more credit to the American people, Kamala Harris. Stop being so elitist. But let's hear what else she has to say.
My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
Let's assume that she's right, which she's not. But let's assume that she's right, because she forgets. Donald Trump has been president before. We have a track record of Donald Trump and his economic policies. And when we get polled, poll after poll, regardless of who is done by and who they ask, people were better off under Donald Trump than they are under Biden-Harris. Everyone agrees with that. The overwhelming response on that, about 70%, all say they were better off under Donald Trump than under Biden-Harris. That's just factually what every poll has said. So to say that he's only helping billionaires and the biggest corporations, that's not what the average person in America says. They had more money then. They could buy more of the things they wanted then. They can't do that now. So something seems to be off with the way she views America and the life that she's living than what the American people are living. Because the American people will tell you they were better with Trump than they are with Biden. Bidenomics failed. But let's go on.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows
I think I caught up. I think we're at question 6 now.
last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So.
Wow. What answers? How in-depth? She won't be Joe Biden. She won't be Donald Trump. She's a woman, presumably. Presumably. I'm not a biologist. She seems to be. And what does that mean? Because substantively, in those clips, she said nothing. She would keep everything the same. So Bidenomics would continue. People would still have high inflation. Things would be very expensive, and you would be no better off than you are right now. She wants 4 more years of exactly what we have right now. That's what she said to Stephen Colbert. That's what she said on The View. Keep it all the same. Okay, let's see how she's going to respond to Bret Baier.
Oh, you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency.
What would she do different? She won't be Joe Biden. What does that mean? I'm being very, very honest here. I'm being very direct. What does that mean? She's not going to be Joe Biden. And you just said that you would not change any of the policies. Asked on 2 different programs, and both times You're not changing any policies. You can't name any policies. Bret Baier just asked you, is there any policy you would change? Is there something that would be different about the policies under the Harris administration than under the Biden-Harris administration? She says, I'm going to be different. What does that mean? Give us something. Can you name something? What can we expect to be different? Give us substantive answers.
And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent
What fresh and new ideas? Yes, presidents come in and they provide fresh and new ideas. They're different than the president before them, except they tell us what their fresh and new ideas are. That's why they get elected. They tell us what they want to do, what they plan to do that's different. And that's why they get elected. Because people say, oh, here's this new idea, here's that new idea. I like that new idea more than this new idea. I'm voting for this person and not that person. You haven't given us anything. You're saying you have a new idea. What new idea? What's fresh and new? You just told Stephen Colbert, you just told The View that you have nothing fresh and new to offer. You just told Bret Baier that, you'll do something fresh and new. What? Give us substance. Name something. It's now been 15 minutes into the interview. Give us something substantive. Let's see how she continues.
a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C.
Who cares where you spent your career? Being in D.C. isn't an answer to the question, which is, what would you do different? Well, I wasn't always in Washington. Who cares? That you could have new and good ideas in Washington, D.C., Washington State, New York State, California, Texas. Ideas aren't restricted to time zones or zip codes, and they're not restricted to parties. So what's your new idea? You're dancing around the question yet again, and you're not offering anything of substance. You're giving us surface level feelings, but that's not an answer for the presidency. You need to have more than just feelings. But let's see if she gives us any kind of substance here. Let's see.
I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me.
No one cares about that. No one cares about, you're in an interview right now. No one cares about who is on stage with you. That's, now you're trying to say, see, we're alike. I'm just like you. So you should vote for me. This is another trick. It's used in politics all the time. I'm just like you. People who are just like you like me, so you should like me too. People who vote like you do, who say they're Republicans like you are, they like me, you should like me too. Give me your vote. It's just a fallacy. Just because Liz Cheney, who I don't believe is a Republican, she's a rhino, she's a Republican in name only. I don't value her opinion. That's why she's not elected anymore. Her own constituents kicked her out. They got rid of her because she isn't Republican. So to say, oh, well, Liz Cheney thinks that Kamala Harris is great. Well, Liz Cheney isn't impressive. That's not someone who I think is important, and neither do her constituents. So saying, oh, see, Liz Cheney likes me, you should like me too. No, I think that's absolutely the wrong answer. In fact, if Liz Cheney likes you, I have less reason to like you. I think you're even worse than I thought of beforehand. But again, this is a tactic. It's a tactic to try and get the audience to say, I like you. It's about feelings. It's about emotion. It's about going with that emotional flow and voting for her without any substance. Because just because Liz Cheney likes you isn't substantive, and it isn't a new idea. It's not something different than the Biden-Harris administration. You're not bringing anything new. Liz Cheney likes it. Well, Liz Cheney's power hungry. So That's not a positive for someone in the middle of Boston or Chicago. It's not a positive for someone in Kansas or anywhere else in America. Okay, let's go on.
Made minutes ago, and the business sector and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about.
Who are these others that contribute to the decisions that you make? You say, and others. Businesses and others. Okay, so you said Liz Cheney. Okay, rhinos. We'll go with all of the rhinos. Say all the rhinos, Republicans in name only. They're all on your side. Fantastic. Businesses. Well, not all businesses, because Goldman Sachs isn't one of them. There's a lot of businesses that aren't. There's a lot of unions that aren't supporting you. And you said, and others. Who else? Who are these other people? Who are they? Are they Americans? Are they outside of America? Are they progressives? Democrats? Socialists? Who are these other groups that have influence with you? Is it Chairman Xi? We have a problem right now with influence from Hunter Biden on Joe Biden. So we need to know who's influencing you. Is it the Chinese government? We know that there are many spies within the Democratic Party from China, like Eric Swalwell, like Kathy Hochul, like Andrew Cuomo, like Eric Swalwell, Dianne Feinstein. We know there are, every time we find a Chinese spy, they're working with the Democratic Party. So are you saying that this is some of the others that will be able to influence you? We need some clarity here. But you're not giving us clarity. Why is that, Kamala Harris?
About, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America.
How does the supply of housing have to do with what you're going to do that's different? Joe Biden has talked about housing before, and he's talked about homelessness, but he hasn't actually come through with it. It's not really different. It's the same. It's just not a good policy. But okay, you're going to build 3 million houses. Okay. Let's say that's different. You want to build 3 million ghettos. Got it. Go on.
And bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital.
The best way to bring more access and capital to businesses is to lower interest rates. And everyone in business knows that. It's not tax credits, which again require you to spend money and then see what happens. But the best way to have more money and have more money being used in investments, like starting a new business, is to lower interest rates. That's literally the best way, because then you can make more loans and people can pay off more loans more quickly. It's actually cheaper for people to start a business with low interest rates than high interest rates. So you're saying tax credit, that's not nearly as beneficial in the long term or even the short term as lowering interest rates. But you don't want to lower interest rates. You want to increase interest rates on businesses, and therefore that's going to stall any business growth. Some of us are paying attention to what you said, and some of us have actually worked with small businesses and are familiar with economics. But let's go on.
To our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for
first-time home buyers are better helped by having lower interest rates than having a credit. It's just pure math. It's just simple math. You will save more money with lower interest rates than with a tax credit every single time. You don't need the tax credit. You need lower interest rates. It's simple math. But she's trying to distract us. And okay, maybe this is her new, fresh idea, except we've heard this all the time. This is the only thing she says every single time. Again, it's the 3 talking points that she has and Orange Man bad. So we've heard 2 of those talking points. Think she's going to talk about Orange Man bad? Let's see.
small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president.
It's a legitimate question. We heard this during the debate of vice presidents, Tim Walz versus J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance brought this up several times. A lot of people have been asking the same question over and over again. Of every walk of life, of all types of politics and political ideologies, everyone says the same thing. If these ideas are so great, why haven't you done them? Why haven't you tried to implement them? Why haven't you talked about them? If they are such game changers, why aren't they in place now? Why wait 3.5 years?
For 3.5 years. So what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that...
Okay, so Orange Man bad. We haven't heard that for a little while. But she said the last day. We've been burdened from the last decade. A decade of burden. Okay, that's 3.5 years of Joe Biden. That's 4 years of Donald Trump. That's 7.5 years. That means that's Obama and Biden again. So she's throwing Obama and Biden under the bus again. This is the second time she's done this. She's throwing them under a bus again. Oh, it's been the burden from the Obama administration. I don't think she realized that she's throwing her own Democratic Party under a bus. She's throwing Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer under a bus. She doesn't realize she's throwing Joe Biden, someone she says is so wonderful, throwing him under a bus. I don't think she realizes what she just said there. Mind you, she's saying very little of anything, but she's throwing them under a bus.
That has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other.
Joe Biden pointed fingers at Americans saying, if you didn't get the jab, you weren't American enough for him. He said that. You have said that people in Florida under hurricane damage, that relief should be decided by people's color of skin, not their emergency need. You said that, Kamala Harris. We have seen Democrats that have put out their equity and inclusion and DEI ordinances. You guys have been separating people, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is saying America first. He didn't say white or black or Chinese, male, female. He said America first. He said make America great again, not white America or black America. He doesn't divide that. You do. You see America as various colors and sexes and orientations and different divisions. It's part of the progressive ideology that everyone is evaluated based on the different check boxes they have. It's why, look at Joe Biden. He put in a Supreme Court justice based on the check boxes she had, not her qualifications. In fact, hey, Kamala, you were selected because of your check boxes, not your qualifications. Joe Biden promised he had to get a black woman who's a Democrat for his vice president. Not the best person, but the right check boxes. So Democrats are the ones separating people in America, not Republicans. Definitely not Donald Trump. He's never said that, not once. So something doesn't sound genuine there. That's disingenuous, I think.
Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up.
No, that's not quite true. But again, Kamala, people aren't being lifted up. Even if you want to go with that ideology, which isn't exactly correct, and it's way oversimplified, but even if we go with that, the Biden-Harris administration hasn't been lifting people up. Remember, inflation has skyrocketed over 21%. We have food inflation and less food. The world's in a global famine. There are less opportunities. We have unemployment increasing in America as we speak. People are less happy. They are more upset. You haven't been lifting people up. And there's more division based on sex and gender and race, and it's more omnipresent in our schools, with our kids, and our jobs, in our entertainment. You're talking about making more divisions. You haven't been lifting people up. You've been dividing people apart. That's your policies. That's the Democratic policies. But okay, let's go on.
The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
Joe Biden said the same thing in 2020. People aren't more unified today. Remember, Joe Biden was running as the uniter and chief, but he didn't unite America. His policies and his words told us that we were different and separate, and that you had to obey or else you're an outsider and you would be ostracized. Those were Joe Biden's words. And by the way, Kamala Harris, you never corrected him. You never said he wasn't right. In fact, you stood beside him and said the same things. So, again, you're not uplifting, you're dividing.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
That is
tell
about
pollsters,
turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people
exhausted.
tell the country is on the wrong track.
That is a fact. And depending on which pollster you want to go to, the number is somewhere between 68 and 79% on the wrong track, depending on which poll you want to go to. But it is overwhelmingly and more than 2/3 of Americans in any poll you look at under the Biden-Harris administration. It has consistently been about 2/3 of the public believe that America's on the wrong track and has been for several years. That's a fact.
Say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
Donald Trump running for office has nothing to do with Joe Biden being in office, Kamala Harris being in office. You are the vice president. Joe Biden, theoretically, is the president. Donald Trump's a guy. He's the former president, but he's a guy. He's just an American citizen. He has no political power. He has nothing other than being a private businessman, other than being a famous American. He doesn't have any political power. You do. You, Kamala Harris, went over to South Korea and embarrassed the United States and pissed off South Korea twice. You did that. You, Kamala, were the one who went to a meeting with South American, Central American leaders to tell them to not come, to have their people not come to the United States, and they ignored you. You were the one in charge of the southern border, not Donald Trump. You're the one in charge, you and Joe Biden are in charge of Bidenomics, and it's failed. So to say that Donald Trump, well, he's been running for president, he hasn't been running for president every day, and more importantly, he's not the president. No matter what he runs for, you can run for anything you want. It doesn't give him any political power. So I don't understand what her answer is.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about.
No. This is the second time that I'm listening to her say this, and I don't know what she's talking about. Bret Baier is about to say he doesn't understand it either, but I don't know what she's talking about. She's trying to say running for president is the same thing as being president, that it has more power than being vice president. I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense. Anyone who would say that doesn't understand the elected system, being an elected official. They don't understand politics, international or domestic. I don't know what she's talking about here. And again, this is the second time I'm listening to this. But let's hear her through it. Let's hear her out.
You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade,
But
people
you're the
have
lever of
become.
power.
But listen, Over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump.
Orange man bad. So her answer is orange man bad. I don't understand that. Her answer to Bret Baier is, why didn't she, in the last 3.5 years, do things that would make people think we're on the right track? Why do they're quoting 79%. It could be anywhere from 2/3 to 79% of Americans think we're on the wrong track. And her answer is because orange man bad. That makes no sense. It made no sense the first time. It makes no sense now. Think about that. She's in charge. Joe Biden's in charge. Their policies are in effect. It's Donald Trump's fault. How is that possible? How is that possible? It makes no sense. You're not supposed to think about this. This is meant to make you think orange man bad so you don't vote for him. You're not supposed to stop and actually think, what did she just say? How is that possible? Donald Trump did not pass a single law. Donald Trump isn't elected. He has no political power. They have all the power. They're the ones talking to foreign nations, talking to President Xi, talking to Putin. They're the ones in charge. They made the decision to abandon 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan, to abandon 16,000 Americans in the Sudan, to totally ignore Haiti and the 40,000 Americans there. Donald Trump had nothing to do with any of that. He's not in charge. They were the ones who decided to spend $157 million on rebuilding Lebanon when we're running out of money to take care of Americans here in America between Hurricanes Helene and Milton. But that's Donald Trump's fault somehow from a decade ago. A decade ago, which would be when Obama was in charge. Obama and Biden. It doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. You're not supposed to think about this. Obviously, you're just supposed to go with, oh, well, she said it. Okay. Orange man bad. Vote blue no matter who, I guess. That's the answer. I don't understand it.
Former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable.
We're not asking about Donald Trump. We're asking, why didn't you, for 3.5 years, do something that would make the American people believe we're on the right track? You have been in power. Whether or not Donald Trump is good or bad at being a president is a separate issue. That's not the question that was asked. You have had 3.5 years, along with Joe Biden, to convince the American people that your policies are good and will work. And the overwhelming majority of Americans don't believe you. They don't see it. Doesn't matter if Donald Trump is dumb or bad or evil or, I don't know, Hitler brought back again. It doesn't matter. Because you, for 3.5 years, have been in charge, not Donald Trump. It's just that simple.
That he is dangerous and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning.
Donald Trump isn't a leader. He's not professing to be the leader. He's not the president. He's a guy who's running for president. You are vice president. You have power. So if people are frustrated with anyone, it's not the guy who's not in power, who can't make any changes, whose policies aren't in effect. It's you, Kamala Harris. It's you and Joe Biden. And you're dodging. You're dodging and trying to make this an emotional dodge, trying to put up orange man bad as your shield as you are dodging from the question. And again, the question which is up there is, it's been 3.5 years. Why are you waiting to implement these great policies that will change people's lives? What have you been doing for the last 3.5 years? Because people think you've done a bad job, that you have failed. Overwhelmingly, Americans think you failed. She hasn't answered that yet.
and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why?
This is a burn. This is such a burn. And again, Bret Baier hasn't been personal. He hasn't been aggressive. He's tried to get answers, yes. He's tried to push back on some of the things she said. He's fact-checked her, absolutely, but he isn't malicious. This isn't the National Association of Black Journalists talking to Donald Trump. It's nothing like that. It's not like any of the left-leaning news media when they're doing interviews with Trump. No. No, like Bloomberg News at the Economic Forum. It's not the same. This is just a guy he's having a conversation with her and he just doesn't agree with some of her policies. Her answers have not been logical or substantive. And here he is asking the same simple thing. And she did it to herself. She's got such great ideas. Her policies, which are the same as Joe Biden's policies, because she doesn't want to change any of the policies that already exist. She might want to add to them, but she doesn't want to change them. These policies, everyone thinks are the wrong policies. Everyone thinks they're not working. 79% do not think she's right. And 50%, according to Bret Baier, 50% of America, which is about right, 50% of America think Joe Biden's horrible, she's horrible, they want Trump. And if she's so great and her policies are so great and it's so self-evident that she's great, why do so many people reject her? It's a fair question.
Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States, why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not
What does that mean?
supposed to be easy.
What does that mean? It's an election for the United States. It's not supposed to be easy. Half of America doesn't think you're the best choice. 79% of America thinks we're on the wrong track with policies you, Kamala Harris, agree with and support and have suggested. Half of America are absolutely voting for someone completely different and disagree with everything you've said. What's it got to do with being easy? I don't understand that. The ease of running has nothing to do with Americans don't support you. Why?
I know, but
It's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk.
This is amazing, folks. I mean, you got to look at this. Why is 50% of America not supporting Kamala Harris? Because it's not easy. Where is the substance in that? How does that make any sense? I can't understand, and it's more than half of America that don't support Kamala Harris. Because, I mean, you also have the Libertarians, the Green Party, you have Cornel West, you've got RFK. There's a lot of Americans who don't support her. Even many Democrats don't support Kamala Harris. But for those that do, I have to ask them the question, this is the best answer you can get? Why are so many people not supporting you? Because it's not easy. I don't understand that. That this just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It is stupid. That is one of the most stupid answers I've ever heard. It is so lacking in substance. My brain hurts. I don't know how she can even say that. And she's saying it as if this is obvious. Isn't it obvious? Isn't it blatantly clear for everyone that it's just not easy? And what's that supposed to mean? How does that affect anything? I'm bewildered by her answer here.
Guided the 50%?
Listen,
Are they stupid? What is
God,
it?
I would never say that about the.
But she did call people stupid. We went over that question when we were talking about the economics. And she said, for those who study, they understand Bidenomics, they understand her policies, and so they're smart. And the average person in America who follows, well, they're dumb. They just follow. She did say that. So she did call Americans stupid. She just said it in a way, she didn't say the word Americans are stupid. She said it in a different way. But she did say that. So, paying attention to her doesn't help her.
The American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle. And
he does make fun of people. That's true. He does. And he does attack his enemies. He does. Absolutely true. He does demean his enemies. That's true. But he also loves America. He says it on a regular basis. He describes how much he has love of the American people, of America, the nation. It's part of the reason why he believes in Make America Great and America First, and he names his policies as such. So, yes, he attacks his enemies, but he loves his friends. So, a little bit of clarity when you add in that extra detail that, yes, he hates his enemies, loves his friends. Not quite the same thing what you're trying to say there, Kamala. Devil in the details,
And diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within.
No, that's Joe Biden. Joe Biden told people when they didn't get the jab, they were enemies. We've heard Democrats say that if you don't obey, you're enemies. We heard John Kerry say that the problem is Americans are talking to other Americans without paying attention to the approved mainstream major media. That having conversations online with people, that's a problem. And we know the White House has been trying to silence people on the internet. We even had Mark Zuckerberg come out and say that the White House was using its political strength to strong harm Facebook to do what they wanted, and that they tried it with others. We've seen the Twitter files as well. We know that you guys have used power to silence people. So to say that that's Trump when it's documented is coming from the Biden-Harris administration, that's just generous again.
An enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
No, he didn't. He didn't say that.
I asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Bret, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he...
That's what Joe Biden has been saying. And you, Kamala Harris, have been silent as he said that. And I've given examples on that several times now. So, no, we've heard, remember, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, you guys support DEI. You guys support CRT. You guys support intersectional policies. You have hierarchies because of your support of equity. You are divisive. Trump doesn't believe in any of that stuff. So again, Trump taking on his enemies, political enemies that do exist, taking on individuals that he thinks are against an America First policy, you may not like that, but that's not the same thing as saying he's attacking all Americans, and he's not trying to bring the military against American citizens. Illegal aliens, yes. American citizens, no. In fact, Kamala Harris, you were the one who said that you want to bring the American government into people's locked homes to take away their firearms. You said that, Kamala Harris. Trump has never said that. So let's be clear about who's saying what about American people. You want to come into their homes and take away their firearms. You want to silence and control what people say on the internet. Trump doesn't believe in any of those things. You want to have open borders and let illegal aliens in and give them transgender surgeries. Trump doesn't. So the people you're calling enemies, which are the American people, and the people you're calling friends, Kamala Harris, are illegal aliens and criminals? I think we have different values. Pretty sure of it.
He has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you.
She has not been fair or respectful to Bret Baier throughout this entire conversation. Not once. Or, well, that's not true. She's, throughout the entire thing, the majority, overwhelmingly, she hasn't been fair or nice or anything. She's been trying to dominate. She's been trying to control and dodge the entire conversation. So, no, you're not being fair at all.
Question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that.
No, we don't all know that. Cite a source. It's real simple, Kamala. Cite your source. Tell us. You seem to say, he said it all the time. Okay, name one of those times. This is your opportunity. You're trying to fact check Bret Baier. Okay, give us something to be correcting, to review. Fact check. Give us an example. She has the opportunity here. Bret Baier is waiting for it. You're saying that he's missed something, that he knows something that he's not telling the American people. What is it? You say, it's happening all the time. Great. Give us an example.
And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protests.
Ah, there it is. 2020. Antifa. The BLM riots. That's what she's talking about. She's talking about people who were trying to burn down federal buildings that were attacking other American citizens. She's talking about autonomous zones. Ah, now it makes sense. See, we're going to send police and state police, and perhaps even we're considering to get the National Guard to go and empty out autonomous zones. These are insurrection zones, areas where every local, state, and federal law are being violated. The Chaz, remember that? Portland, Austin, Brooklyn, where they were taking over. Atlanta, where children as young as 6 were killed because of the insurrectionist autonomous zones. The billions of dollars of damage just in Minneapolis, Minnesota alone. She's talking about BLM. She's talking about Antifa. And she's upset. She's saying that Trump's a bad guy because he didn't want to let Antifa take over cities, that he didn't want BLM burning down sections of cities, that he didn't want to have rampant violence from progressives and socialists throughout our country. This is what she thinks is being against America, letting insurrectionists run rampant, just kidnapping American communities. Okay, we have very different values, you and me, Kamala Harris, massively different. Now it's in context for people. She's talking about Antifa. She's talking about BLM. She's talking about autonomous zones. That's what she's talking about.
He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him.
He talked about locking up people for violently disagreeing with him, burning down buildings to disagree with him, attacking police officers, attacking other citizens, and kidnapping them, holding businesses hostage. That's what he's talking about. Very big difference.
Democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Do you remember what was the response about the jab? About how you wouldn't be able to go to work? How the Democrats, whether at the state level or at the federal level, were talking about how people don't deserve to get to work, that they were evil and villainous and they were harming others because they didn't get the experimental jab that we now know has side effects. I don't think she's thinking this through the way she thinks she is.
And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said.
Mark Milley, who decided unilaterally to actually aid and support China, America's enemy, with secret information. He gave them information they had no right to have. And he did not follow the law. He actually broke the chain of command. He wasn't helping his commander-in-chief. He was helping his political faction. Yeah, Mark Milley is a traitor. Going on.
About Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump. You call Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now
he's unstable. He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties?
There it is. There it is. And she smacked her face into a wall. And the question hits her like a brick. And she's the one who brought it up. Donald Trump, he's just unstable. He's out of his mind. He's crazy. He's not fit to be president. Kamala, when did you find out Joe Biden was unfit to be president? Joe Biden, who has great difficulty walking, who falls over, going upstairs, going downstairs, walking across a flat stage. He falls over. Joe Biden, who doesn't remember where he's supposed to sit in a room and has a card, huge card telling him where to sit and who to talk to, what he's supposed to say. Joe Biden, who mumbles and loses himself in the same sentence when he's answering a question or when he's giving a speech. Joe Biden, who mumbles a lot. Joe Biden, who we now know, and it has been confirmed by all of the mainstream media that you tell us have all the approved messages, they've confirmed. Joe Biden only works from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. 5 days a week. When did you, Kamala Harris, the vice president, when did you become aware of that? When did you know and not tell the American people? She has never told the American people. When did she first know that? Look at her. She's in pain. She knows she's in trouble. She doesn't want to answer this question. There's no way she can answer this question, and it's not a gotcha question. It's a legitimate question. It's a question I have been begging every single news media organization that has done an interview with her to ask her, and none of them have. They have all avoided this question like the plague because it's just going to look bad for her, no matter what she says. But what does she say?
He's appeared diminished.
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done and make.
She knew this question was coming. She knew that Fox News at some point was going to ask about Joe Biden. She knew that all of the friendly news organizations, they would avoid it and cover it up for her. But Fox News isn't one of her friendly news organizations. She knew this question was coming, and she and her staff had to have prepared for this. They had to. They had to have an answer ready. And her answer is, Joe Biden has judgment and experience. When he's lucid, when he's coherent, that's only 6 hours a day. There's 18 hours a day that Joe Biden isn't coherent or lucid. He's at least 2 days a week where he's not even on the job at all. And we don't know who is in charge. And Kamala Harris won't tell us who's in charge when Joe Biden isn't coherent, when he isn't lucid, when his judgment and experience don't matter because he isn't He doesn't have that judgment. He doesn't have that experience. 18 hours a day. Who's running this country? And she knows. She has to know. She sees him all the time. She's in the White House on a regular basis. They actually work on things together. So what's the answer? What is the answer? His judgment and experience when he's coherent? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And she knows it.
Making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
Joe Biden's not on the ballot, but you are, Kamala Harris. He was on the ballot, and then we found out he was incoherent. That's the only reason why he's not on the ballot, because Democrats voted for Joe Biden. No one voted for Kamala Harris. Not one vote. She didn't get through the primaries. No one voted for her. Never have they voted for a primary for Kamala Harris for president. Just hasn't happened. So she's being disingenuous here. Joe Biden, he is on the ballot in terms of what did you know and when did you know it? Because he got kicked off the ballot because he's not capable of doing the job. And we literally should have had the 25th Amendment against him. The question is, how long ago should we have done that? So, Kamala, be fair, be honest, and talk to America here.
I understand.
And
but
Donald Trump
But
is,
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump.
So she won't answer the question. She lied to the American people. She lied to the American people's face, and she knows it. See, that's why she doesn't want to answer this, because no matter when she says this happened, whether it was the day before the debate or it was 4 years ago, it doesn't matter. She's lied to the American people, and she's not done her job. See, if she knew back in 2022 that Joe Biden had lost his mind, it's her fault for not telling the American people. And she should have. If she found out that it was in the day before the debate with Donald Trump in 2024, well, then she's ignorant of what's happening right in front of her face. She's a fool, and she doesn't deserve to be vice president or president. She's, in fact, now that we know the truth, which is the only reason why she's running for president, is because we know the truth now, because it has been exposed. She can't answer this question at all, because no matter how she tries to answer it, it reveals how bad she is. Either she denied telling the American people the truth, or she is completely incompetent. That's the only two answers you can get. That's the only two ways this gets answered, which is why she's trying so desperately to make this about Orange Man bad, that it has to be about Donald Trump, when it's really a reflection of her character and her abilities. It's reflecting directly on her. She didn't tell American people. She could have. Could have got the 25th Amendment against Joe Biden, and she'd be president right now. She could have, but she didn't. Was that because of incompetence, or was that because, well, she didn't care?
Which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out, even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous.
She's talking about Orange Man bad. She's saying that about Donald Trump. You could take all of those statements and put that against Joe Biden. And she knew. She has been aware every step, and she didn't tell the American people. She swore an oath to protect the American people, not the Democratic Party, not her boss, Joe Biden. She swore an oath to protect America and the Constitution. and she allowed someone who is incapable of doing the job 18 hours a day, she allowed him to run the country into the ground, which is why 79% of Americans think we're on the wrong track. Because Joe Biden is a part-time zombie president. Whether you like that or not has nothing to do with the fact that is the case. Whether you like me saying that he is a zombie part-time president doesn't change. That's what he is. And that's why 79% of the public think we're on the wrong track. And Kamala Harris knew it. Whenever she learned, she knew it and didn't tell anyone because she was more concerned about power than she was about the American people. She broke her oath. That's the only way to look at that. That's the only answer to that. And no matter what you think of every single answer she has dodged, every single time she's tried to take control of this interview, whether or not you think she's had good answers or bad answers, this final one is devastating. She won't answer because no matter how she answers, the truth is revealed. Even when she doesn't answer, the truth is revealed. She knew and she didn't care. Not until it gave her an opportunity to become president. She's more concerned about her ambition. She is selfish to the core. And this question is the question that reveals it, which is why ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, no one asked her this question. Because there is no answer that is positive. Not one.
And should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
Madam Vice President, two more things.
Bret Baier is getting signals behind Kamala Harris. He's getting signaled, and they're trying to end this interview. Kamala Harris's team is trying to kill this as fast as they can. And they're waving him off saying, we're ending this. This is done. We got to stop. No more. That's who he was just nodding his head to that team in the background, because they're done. They realize this has gone too far. They've fallen off a cliff, and they know it.
You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran.
I got to tell you, I agree with her. Iran is a massive threat to the United States. Absolutely something that has not gotten enough attention. If there's anything I agree with, this is one thing I think I agree with Kamala Harris. Iran is a great threat to America. Between the terrorism and their direct actions, they are a threat. Due to the ICBMs and ballistic missiles that they were allowed to continue to develop under the Iran nuclear deal of the Obama-Biden administration, they have become a massive threat to the United States, to the European Union, to our allies around the world. Yeah, I think she's right on that.
Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
Well, it's really not your highest priority, because if it was, you and the Biden administration would not have spent the last 3.5 years removing sanctions from Iran, giving them more money to be able to give that money to their terrorist puppets, that would be Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, and allow them to be able to attack Israel more freely and more constantly with more and more rockets and missiles and bombs. And they wouldn't, and it's also because of that same sanction relief that has come from the Biden-Harris administration for the last 3.5 years, that Iran has been able to develop drones that they now sell and give to Russia as part of its fight against the Ukraine. So for someone who thinks Iran, correctly, is a massive threat to the United States and our allies, you have been absolutely silent and complicit in helping Iran to be able to attack our allies and the United States around the world. It's amazing that you don't recognize that.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the number one threat?
Again, the Biden-Harris administration has not acted like Iran is a threat. They have spent 3.5 years trying to make friends with Iran, that lowering sanctions and removing sanctions on Iran, and allowing Iran to develop those missiles, those drones that we now see around the world, and ignoring the terrorism. In fact, Joe Biden helped to take the Houthis, took them off the terrorist watch list, gave them money to help what he called humanitarian aid that allowed them to buy rockets and missiles that they're now using in the Red Sea against the United States, civilian and military vessels, as well as our allies. So, the Biden-Harris administration empowered Iran, and Kamala Harris said nothing about it. Let it happen. So what's up with that?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion that Iran posed a threat to Israel, I was there.
So what? She was there. She was in the Situation Room. And? So was a fly. There could have been a mouse in the room. There could have been a rabbit in the room. That doesn't mean anything. Just because you were there doesn't mean that that was a good thing or that it had a positive impact. You were there. So was the wallpaper. I mean, seriously, I'm not trying to insult her directly like that, but what she said is insulting. She's there. And did anyone ask you any questions? Did anyone take your advice? Did you offer any advice? Did you understand what was going on? Do you have a plan? What is the international policy of the Biden-Harris administration? I don't know what it is. I do politics every day for 18 years. I follow politics and comment on it. I don't know what the international policy of the Biden-Harris administration is, and I don't know anyone who does. Not one pundit, not one news media organization, nobody knows what is the Biden-Harris administration's policies. So she says she was in the room, and I could have been in the room. That doesn't mean anything if I never say anything. If no one asks my opinion and I don't offer an opinion, does it matter? Does it matter who was in the room? What were you doing? Did you do something while you were in the room? And what you did, was it effective? Was it efficient? That's the question. No one cares that you were in the room. Were you effective and efficient in the room? That's the question. But let's go on.
Most recently in the Situation Room, in the most recent attack, working with the heads of our military and doing what America must always do to defend and to support Israel in its requirement to defend itself.
Working with them how? See, you could say, I was working with them. What did you do? Did you advise them? Did you offer policy? Because we don't have a policy for the Middle East. We don't have a policy for dealing with Iran. So you didn't offer them policy. Did you have a plan? What's that plan based on? How did you help? What did you do? Did you get coffee? I don't understand. You're not saying anything substantive. But, and again, you don't have to give away secrets. Just tell us you were part of the planning. Not that, oh, I was there, I was helpful. How? Again, you could have got coffee. That would have been helpful. Someone could have dropped their pen. You picked it up. That could be helpful. That's not substantive. What did you do that was substantive? Because publicly, around the world, you haven't been substantive. You haven't been helpful. You may have been in that situation room. The world knows nothing about it. And until you just now said you were there in April when Iran was attacking Israel, no one knew. No one knew you were there. And you had no impact on Iran before or after. None. So I don't see why that's a big brag. It doesn't seem to be useful in any way.
And to give American support to be able to allow Israel to have the resources to defend itself against attack, including from Iran and Iran's terrorist proxies in the region.
Right.
And that
but those
is,
proxies were getting funded by
my
Iran.
commitment to that is unyielding and unwavering.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
No, Donald Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal because he didn't trust Iran because they lie constantly. And there were discrepancies about whether or not they were developing nuclear weapons. And they had secret bases that were not revealed to the international agencies that were helping to develop nuclear weapons. Most importantly, Donald Trump saw the loophole that that Obama and Biden allowed, which is the development of ballistic missiles under the Iran nuclear deal, and said that's dangerous. Because it's one thing for them to develop a nuclear bomb, but they can't get it anywhere. See, they need the missile, the ICBM, the ballistic missile, to transport that nuclear bomb to somewhere else. Obama let them develop that bomb. Now they have hypersonic missiles. They didn't have it before. That's on Obama. That's on Biden. And she didn't say anything about it. She's perfectly fine with that. She thinks that, Donald Trump was bad because he reversed Obama's bad deal. Remember, it was John Kerry himself, then Secretary of State, John Kerry, on January of 2016, said to the world that the United States, through the Iran nuclear deal, was helping increase the amount of terrorism in the world. That's a bad deal. I'm not surprised Donald Trump ended it. In fact, I'm glad he did, because that deal made the world less stable and increased the amount of terrorism in the world. Not because I think so, because John Kerry told the world that was happening. So, Kamala, you're not very accurate here.
Estimates in billions.
It was during Donald Trump's
that
administration
go towards
that
the Iran regime.
That we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention how Donald Trump has treated and talked about America's military and military service people, calling them suckers and...
Now, again, Kamala Harris is busy trying to say Orange Man bad. She didn't like his policies. Trump didn't cause us to be in an additional war. Biden has. The Red Sea is a war by any means, any other description besides that word. We're proxy fighting against Russia right now with Ukraine. We have conflicts. Our people are being subjugated. They're being tortured as we speak and abandoned around the world. If you're asking me which president's foreign policy do I think is more effective and beneficial to the American people, it's hands down Donald Trump. Was he perfect? By no means whatsoever. But we didn't have this kind of chaos going on in the United States to American people around the world. You didn't have that chaos under Donald Trump. But we damn sure have it under the Biden Harris administration. And we have no reason to believe Harris won't continue that. But let's go on.
Losers
Hamas
has diminished
and Houthis.
the significance.
We're talking over each other. I apologize.
Well, I would like that we would have a conversation.
No, you won't. No, you don't want a conversation. You want to dominate. You want to say whatever you want, and Bret Baier is supposed to say, thank you for actually telling me that. He's not supposed to ask you questions. You've made that very clear throughout the entire thing. You have been the antagonist, Kamala Harris, not Bret Baier. Bret Baier is trying to do his job. He's trying to get answers. He's trying to make sure you give a substantive answer. And Kamala Harris, you want him to be CBS. You want him to roll over and be friendly and don't ask anything sensitive. And that's not what he's doing. So no, you're not trying to have a conversation. You're trying to control the conversation. Big difference.
That is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about.
But you haven't been presenting choices, Kamala Harris. You've been saying Orange Man bad. That's what you've been doing. We've been trying to, and watching this. Yes, it's only been 25 minutes, 34 seconds in the interview. I've been doing this now, 3 hours going over this in depth, and you haven't been giving us anything substantive. You've been avoiding and dodging questions desperately over and over again. So I don't know what you think this interview is supposed to be. Well, actually, I do. You think this was supposed to be like CBS. This was supposed to be like ABC and NBC. This is supposed to be a fluff puff job, like if you were on The View or something. But it's not. This is actually what an interview is supposed to be like. You will get fact-checked. There will be context given to the audience and to the American voter, that you aren't going to be allowed to just say nonsense nonstop without someone saying, hang on, let's actually try and focus here. So, yeah, he's trying to have a conversation to give the American people solid questions for you to give solid answers to. You're just refusing to participate in that process because it's the first time you've ever had to. And it shows.
About this election, and the contrast is important.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the subject of Iran, I am offering what should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make a decision
and there are critics
that they feel.
Who look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard.
They have been jumping up and down for about 2 minutes now, ever since and probably during the entire conversation about Joe Biden being a part-time zombie president. Kamala's people have been trying to get her out of there. They know it's over. This is dangerous. She's failed. There's no recovery from this. That's what I truly believe. And they want this done. They want to get past this as fast as they can. I'm sure they were looking to do 30 minutes, but nope, they got to get out of this room. They have to spin this as hard as they can, as fast as they can, because they know this looks bad. And I believe this is going to cost her the election.
Hard here. I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things.
There's more to say. I have much more to say.
That's all she wanted to say. She wanted to talk about Donald Trump. Bret Baier wanted to talk about Kamala Harris. Bret Baier wanted to talk about Kamala Harris policies. Kamala Harris wants to talk about Orange Man bad. You can't have a conversation when you're looking at things in that kind of way. And that's what Bret Baier is saying here at the very end. It's basically a slap. Look, stupid, you could have told the American people all kinds of stuff about you and your policies, but instead you wanted to talk about Donald Trump and Orange Man bad. You gave Donald Trump more advertising, and you could have done something for yourself. It's kind of interesting the way he said that.
A lot of things that people want to learn about you and your policies, and that's why
I invite everyone to go to KamalaHarris.
So instead of taking the opportunity to hear her tell people now, after this fiasco. Now she's saying, go to my website, read something that someone else wrote about my policies that she doesn't have memorized, that she doesn't know those policies. Go read what someone else wrote about what she's going to do that doesn't match anything she said in this interview, and then you'll know what she's, everything that she was supposed to do here, you got to go and read it on your own. Why? Because she doesn't think you're going to. Because you're not going to go to her website. Because you're not going to read 80 pages of her policies. Because she doesn't even know those policies. She has no idea what's being said there. She doesn't think you're going to read it either. So she thinks that she's winning with this answer, that she has somehow elevated herself, and that this is the winning answer for people. See, I've got all the answers. Then why don't you know them? Why didn't you tell us them? Why can't you quote them? Because she doesn't know them.
And you will see that I have 80 pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them. And it includes what I intend to do about affordable housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do.
And that's why we invited.
Those are the same 3 things she said during the interview. In every single interview she has had, the same 3 policy positions. It's the same ones she had in the debate. And again, she says the same 3 things. You have 80 pages of policy, so you say. Why is it you can't name anything except those same 3 policy positions every single time? You're trying to tell people that you're so deep and that you have such knowledge, and yet you can't name more than 3 policy positions. And people wonder why I don't believe Kamala Harris. She's not credible.
Strengthen our economy.
To see where you were in 2019 and where you are now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
and
they're giving me a hard rap
Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
It's good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, fake smile because it was a horrible interview. And I say it was a horrible interview not because Bret Baier was trying to be, he wasn't being unreasonable. He wasn't being overbearing. He wasn't being rude. He wasn't being disrespectful. He was trying to do his job. He was trying to get substantive answers. And Kamala Harris just can't. I think this is going to have a massive impact on her campaign. She's already cratering. The reason why she went on to Fox News is because she is losing. People are listening to her. They are hearing what she is saying, and they are abandoning her, just as I always expected they would, because she has nothing to offer. Because she's worse. In ways, she's worse than Joe Biden, because she is cognizant. At least Joe Biden, he has a medical condition that prevents him from doing better. She's doing this just because she's selfish, because she wants the power, and she doesn't care. And that's worse. That's way worse. But with that said, I want to thank you if you've been with me. I'm going to try and edit this down a little bit. There's a couple of spots where I can take out pauses that I took. So it'll be something like 2 hours, 2.5 hours of video. I thank you if you've been here with me on this deep dive all the way through. Every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream where we take your questions, your answers, your conversation in chat, and we talk about the issues that are affecting us all. We'll, of course, continue to do election coverage at big races and little races all the way until the day of the election, and we've been doing this for 18 years. I hope if you found any of this to be informative, educational, entertaining, please give us a like, a share, subscribe. It makes all the difference. It truly matters to me. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers. We would appreciate your support in that. And until Sunday, I thank you. Night. Obey and believe. Hell no! I'm happy to be here with you today. Understand the logic, and we see this in social media on a regular basis, and it's something that Newsweek decided not to tell you about. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee has no idea what she's talking about.
You can meet a very, very stringent accuracy rate when it's important, when it matters, like in federal elections.
Wild stories yet untold.